there are a lot of people that are a lot smarter than I am that are building these airplanes. Phil Simon has got some do's and don'ts, and I'll turn it over to Phil, and you can come up here and
I'll be quick.
Don't be quick.
I made a list of 36 do's and don'ts that were helpful to me. All right, I'll be quick. Piece of aluminum tube. You put it on a table saw and rip it. You rip a slot in it. And then when you open your canopy, you slide this over the cable, and it keeps the wind from slamming your canopy shut. And this is a very valuable thing. My canopy, when I left California, it was no cracks. You look at it now, there's 2 huge cracks. I landed in North Dakota with 40-mile-an-hour winds, and it ripped this canopy right out of my hand and broke it. You just put this over the wire like this.
Isn't that slick?
You'd have to shorten it, but it keeps.
I'm making one of those this afternoon. That is the slickest thing I've seen since sliced bread. I get it.
All right. Next thing, if you have tri-gear, you learn that it's real hard to move the airplane around without a tow bar. We made a 2-piece tow bar. This way I can keep it in the airplane. You can buy a Cessna tow bar and it'll work, but this tow bar just goes like this. And I actually have a buddy who works in a bicycle shop. They make titanium bicycles, so this is titanium and it's very lightweight. But anyway, that's a suggestion there that I thought might be helpful. Okay. And if you want any of these, I have these all. I can email them to you. Basically, here's what I would do differently, and what I have the mixture in the center, the mixture and the throttle in the center, because my wife, I have dual sticks. My wife wanted to learn to fly. She's been up once and won't get in it again. So I'm stuck with an airplane with the throttle in the middle, and that's a big problem for me because I'm flying with this hand on the stick and the throttle here, and I want to put the flaps out. I've got to let go of the throttle, grab the stick, put the flaps out, come back to here and go back to here. And I don't like that at all. And so I twice have gotten lazy and reached over and tried to do the flaps like this, and both times the flaps popped out of the detent on me because I didn't have it all the way in, and all of a sudden the airflow blows the flaps up and the plane drops. So my recommendation there is on your little piece of angle that you make the detents for the flap handle, put one of those little safety nibs on every detent. Okay, if you're going to run wing wiring, which I did, no one told me this, run your wiring forward of the spar, not aft. Because if you have it aft, it's real hard in here to get the wires forward. Well, I have strobe lights, and you got to run wires.
Right.
Run them forward of the spar, so you can get to your electrical system. I can email this to you. You don't have to take any notes. If you're going to polish the airplane, which mine's polished, polish it as you build it. It's a lot easier to do that than to try to reach over the flaps and polish like this. You know, polish your flaps on your bench outside. Okay, I mentioned the safety nibs. That's a real important thing. That's probably the most important thing I would say to you on your flaps is every detent, put one of those little nibs on it.
What is that? What's the safety?
Well, the way the plans are on the full flaps position, there's a little tip that sticks out so that the flap handle can't come out. The plans only show it on the full flap position. Okay. Another thing, a mistake I made is I put I apologize to those of you that have heard this, but the majority of you haven't. I installed my horizontal stabilizer skins upside down. I didn't know there was a top and a bottom to them, and it took me a year and a half before I learned that I did it wrong, and I go to put it on the airplane and it doesn't fit. So if you look at your fuselage, you can see the horizontal stabilizer is where the fuselage is going like this. So, you know, the skin, you can see you need more skin on top than on the bottom, if that'll help you doing it. My microphone and jack outlets. I put mine where John has his up there. I wish I'd put them lower. They're up here, up high. it's very hard to reach right here and plug them in. If they were down lower, you'd have another foot of space. So I would recommend you to.
I put mine just above the seat.
Uh-huh.
It's too low.
Okay, then they're somewhere in between.
Yes, you need somewhere because your seat belt gets it.
Okay, another thing, we had a problem with hesitation. My plane's the yellow one there, and it used to be on. It's black. The engine cowling is black on top because I like the way it made it look longer. Well, that sucks up heat, so I land at a hot place in the summer. The engine isn't cooling off; it's getting hotter, and then I'd go to take off, and the engine, it's called stumbling. There's a lot of coughing and sputtering. It's vapor lock. And there's a lot of solutions to that, and they were mistakes that I made. The first mistake was I mounted the gascolator on the firewall at an angle, and the gascolator should be vertical, so that's one thing. And then I used the wrong gascolator. I used a cheap one, and John Monet said, oh, that's the wrong gascolator. Then I ran the fuel line from the tank right through the firewall and then horizontally to the gascolator. That gets all the heat from the engine compartment. So my suggestion would be to run that fuel line on this side of the firewall so it doesn't get hot. Okay, I've got 10 circuit breakers and 10 switches. If I were going to build another airplane, I'd use combination switches and circuit breakers that give me a lot more panel space. I have a Grand Rapids engine instrument system, the one that takes 4 EGTs and 4 cylinder head temperatures. I've got a bundle of wires like that with the 4 EGT wires and the 4 cylinder head temperature wires and the oil pressure all going through the firewall. There are people that make these things where all these wires run to a terminal block on the engine compartment side, and then you only have to run one wire through your firewall. So I would do that again, so I didn't have this big bundle of wires going through. I have a bicycle cage for a water bottle, a bicycle water bottle mounted right between my legs on the forward side of the spar tunnel. I would do that again. I like it very much, but do it before you close things up. I had to stand on my head to get there and try to install it afterwards, so install that cage early on. It's very difficult. The part I liked the best in building this airplane was the wiring. I really enjoyed doing the wiring, but it's quite difficult to do that, especially if your wings are on or the fuel tank's in the way. So, you know, if you can figure out a way either to get in underneath, or we ended up finally taking this off and taking the fuel tank out so we could wire, and you can't, of course you can't have a canopy, and you want to be able to stand there so you can't have your wings on. Now, people have told me this is a mistake, but I have these Vans NACA ducts, and then the smaller, then you run tubing, and then you have the eyeballs. I bought the smaller eyeballs. It was a system that works really good, but it took a lot of time. Someone makes a snap out one you put right here in the windshield, but then someone else here told me that, well, that's a mistake because it'll slow you down, so I don't know, but I thought I would explore that. I'm almost done here if I don't want to take too long. I bought the cheapest comm antenna that I could buy, and that's on the bottom of the airplane there, that one going like that. That was a mistake. It doesn't work very well, and ground control can never hear me, and I wish I had bought a higher quality comm antenna. I have a Dynon EFIS, the electronic flight instrument system. I like it very much. It's very precise. We just downloaded all the new changes and the new updates for it. It's all free, and it's very precise. It's got a little picture of an airplane with a circle, and you can, in flight, change by pushing the button, change your pitch and bring the horizon right up to the center of that circle, and you can fly nice and straight and level. The problem with mine is it disappears when the sun's behind me, and so you see on mine I have a cardboard shade to try to, well, I understand the new ones don't have that, but consider the sunlight, you know, shining on your screens, because some of them disappear. I have a True Track wing leveler, and that's one of my two favorite things. My favorite things are the Garmin GPS and my wing leveler. I absolutely am sold on that wing leveler. When I don't have it on and I want to unfold a chart, I've got 15 pounds of charts in that airplane for flying out here. And I'm pulling charts out and folding them, and the next thing you know, you look outside and and you're doing this, But with the wing leveler on, and I'm not exaggerating, with the wing leveler on, I can go 10 minutes and not touch anything. It just stays level. And if it's harder to maintain pitch than roll on this airplane. If I have to adjust the pitch, I just finger pressure is all it takes. So I really like the wing leveler. On the engine instrument system, I have the Grand Rapids, which is good. I like it and I can read it in the sunlight, but it's numbers. And it's really hard to make sense of a whole bunch of numbers. It's better to have columns or bars or dials or something. So if you had a bunch of bars and one bar is way up high, that stands out. When instead I have all these numbers and I have to stop and think about it. So I wouldn't get the one with only numbers again. If you look at mine, I have two 12-volt auxiliary power outlets in each corner. And I really like that. I have my Garmin GPS plugged in one of them. And can you hear me if I keep talking? Okay, it's pretty cheap to have those 12-volt auxiliary power outlets, and we plugged the Garmin into one. And by the way, on that plug-in, we ran a single wire over to the True Track wing leveler. That thing will fly a route. If you have a route in your Garmin that goes, like this, that wing leveler will fly that thing just by running one wire over to it. And the other one on this side, I have an auxiliary fuel system for mine because I'm going to fly the Alaska Highway. So anyway, that's it. I have cabin heat. I like that very much. And we just took a regular muff, bandsawed it in half, made it longer, and made a center section and riveted that on. And we rotated the inlet and the outlet so that everything lined up perfectly. But where that hose brings the hot air into the cabin, you're going to make a 2 1/4 inch hole in that stainless steel firewall. Well, first of all, it's hard to make a hole that big in stainless steel. So you can get on eBay, you buy it from some other builder. They're called Greenleaf cutters, and you drill a hole, and it's these two parts, and you use a big crescent wrench, and you tighten this nut up, and it cuts the hole right through it. Anyway, you're going to need a heater box to control the heat on and off. Please don't buy an aluminum one. If you have a fire, it'll melt in 15 or 20 seconds, and you're going to have a hole that big in your firewall, and it's going to burn your legs up. I knew a guy who died from that. He had a fuel-injected engine, and he got an engine fire, and he pulled the power off. He's downwind lake. He pulled the power off, and of course, in fuel injection, that bypasses more, and that's where his fire and this leak was on the bypass. It made the fire worse. Melted right through the firebox. He had flames coming in like that, and he died just trying to get it on the ground from downwind lake. I mentioned the splitting the cowling right here and lifting that off. I would do that again. I would do that if I were going to build again. I'm almost done here. There are guys that are zinc chromating or allodyning their parts, and then John says don't do anything. I use something that I learned from the RV builders, and it's called Marhide Self-Etching Primer. It comes in a spray can, and you get it at an automotive paint store. And if I was just going to rivet this here, you just take this, wipe it off with the acetone, spray it with this Marhide. The stuff dries very quickly, and then you can just put it on, and you have some protection if you're worried about it. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I went 2 years building an airplane. No one ever told me how to remove the plastic. You have this protective plastic you want to leave on, but you want to remove it right here where you're going to rivet. Well, I knew not to use a razor blade because it would make a scratch. Then we tried to tear it. What you do, and I never figured it out, use a soldering iron and a straight edge, and just melt yourself 2 lines, and then you can peel it off. It looks better. I would do what we did is raise your windshield bow. John already mentioned that. But you look at some planes and they go like this, and you just raise the bow to solve that. Your interior, Sonex interior upholstery, you ask them to put you in touch with the seamstress who's in Oshkosh. You call her on the phone, order it with zippers in the back of the seat, $50 extra, and then you can take, they insist on selling these things with that white foam, which is absolutely worthless. Throw that out and buy temper foam, and put temper foam in there, and then you have a nice, good cushion. I have some with me if you want to see it. Okay, just a couple more items. Fuel tank, no one ever told me this. Clean the darn tank before you install it. I installed it and then had to take it out. So it's full of junk, and there's also plastic where they put the fittings in. Clean all that stuff out before you ever install it. Secondly, mine is translucent. I don't know what they are now, but I put mine outside and put 1 gallon of water in it, made a line, and put that 0, I call that 0, and then I kept putting in 1 gallons, and I kept making black lines on the cockpit side, so I can look underneath, and if my fuel gauge doesn't work, I can see the lines, you know, the bottom half. And then the strap that holds supports the tank, we built 2 sets of them by the plans and didn't work, and I called up Jeremy and he says, oh, we don't use that, we use stainless steel strapping material, which is what we used. So that is my hints, and I can email it to you if you want them. If you're interested in flying the Alaska Highway, there is a Yahoo group called Sonex 2. I'll keep talking here. Sonex 2 Alaska in 08. SONEX number 2 Alaska 08. We got about 20 Sonex builders on it. They all say they want to go with me next summer on the Alaska Highway. You know, maybe 4 or 5 will come, but if anyone's interested, join our group. We'll email you all the stuff we've been emailing back and forth. You got to figure you're going to need some way to get fuel. Yes, sir.
How much did the wing leveler cost?
I think maybe $1,300, $1,400.
Yeah, it's about 14. Yeah.
$1,400.
We have 2 servos that run in?
1 servo. It's not an autopilot. It's just a wing leveler. And I bought it in 2 parts. I bought the servo motor and the mechanical part first, and then a year and a half later I bought the electronic part. If you're interested in flying the Alaska Highway, it's quite an adventure. I'm here from California and I'm going back. When I get back, I will have landed in 32 states. It's a real adventure to do something like that. I mean, I was a professional pilot for 32 years. I'm having more fun on this, you know, flying at 1,000 feet and landing in all these places. Well, the Alaska Highway's probably a once-in-a-lifetime adventure. I mean, you've got to bring survival gear and all sorts of stuff. But if it's something you're interested, you know, join our group or email us. But you have to come up with some way for fuel, because the airports can be about 400 miles apart. We have enough fuel for that, but you don't have enough fuel to fly there, and if the weather's bad, turn around and come back. There are gravel strips in between, and there are straight stretches of the road you can land on, and you can carry extra fuel in a 5-gallon tank. Online there's 2 different areas where kit boxes did this. 2 years in a row, a bunch of kit boxes flew the Alaska Highway, but they carry 26 gallons of fuel and we don't. And one of their guys did run out of fuel with 26 gallons, and he had to land on the highway. So that's it for my 2 bits. But you know.